Hey there all, Omen here from Transition Partners, here for another episode of Leadership Lessons in Cyber. Hey Chetan, how are you doing?
Hey, Oman, I'm doing well, and how are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's been a nice day here, and obviously I want to thank you for, I suppose, coming on to this podcast that I'm currently starting. And I suppose you're one of them people where we have got to know each other recently, and I think that your points of view can be good for anyone really, from C-suite level all the way to analysts. So I suppose without me talking too much, it'd be good to just sort of get an intro from yourself about who you are. You're probably the better person to answer.
Sure. So, Oman, thank you for having me on the podcast, and definitely happy to introduce myself. So, my journey into information security was a transitional journey. I started into the field of IT back in 1997, 98, when you had Windows 95 and such going on. I was a developer in Java and not VB script. There was no VB script, Java and Visual Basic, which was there. I also was working on something called Fox Pro and Clipper. There were like real old style programming back then, and working with WordStar. After that, I came to US, and in US I started working as a senior system administrator for a Swedish bank. Uh, and believe it or not, but I joined the Swedish bank on 4th September 2001, and September 11, 2001 happened within 7 days. So it was a very interesting time period for me, for 7 days working pre 911, and then after that post 911. How it 911 impacted us is we were a small branch here in New York, and suddenly auditors and regulators started asking us, how are you securing the system? And small branches at that point did not have CISOs. Early 2001, they had fraud department, other department, but dedicated information security or IT security professionals, they were not there. So I was working with my colleague, and we started implementing uh, we created IT security policies, believe it or not. We started implementing. NIST was good help at that point, so that was our guiding beacon and how the whole program was set up. But once the program was set up, world was also progressing with us, right? So information security became a prominent issue, and segregation of duty became a prominent issue. So auditors came and told us, you cannot be creating your policies and implementing them at the same time. You need to segregate this. And therefore, we hired our first information security officer back in 2003 or 4. And I delegated all the policies and other framework to them. And me and my coworker were implementing those policies for quite some time. And then in 2015, I was hired as a regional information security officer at that place. And that's my first step into information security side, from IT security side. So that's when the journey started. I got my CISSP certification, and started digging deeper into governance, risk, and compliance aspect of information security. Sometimes we believe that information security is purely about firewalls and routers, but equally important is how you set up your program, what you do, how you manage those risks, how you manage your resources, how you manage your tools. Uh, Having that vision and having implementing that vision is very important. So that was my segue into that part of the world from IT security. Uh, and then I got hired by a German bank as an information security officer for the New York and London branch. For New York and London, we were going through a bit of a transition at that point from world of information security and such. New York had a newly instated regulation called DFS 500. So all the banks were trying to make sure that ready for the certification, because it requires an annual certification to regulators. that all the banks are scrambling to do that, make sure that they are doing things correctly, they are doing things right, and they're being secure. In the UK, it was a Brexit time, and also they had a new regulation called PSD2, Payment Service Directive number 2. The second version came out, so I was trying to implement that in UK. In the US, I was trying to work on NYCR 500, and then also working with our headquarters in Germany to make sure our programs at three places are aligned. And sometimes that's a challenge, right? When you cross geographical boundaries, for US, privacy is probably second most important thing. For Europeans, privacy is the most important thing, right? So how to achieve that harmony and make sure that you are adhering to those regulations was an important task that we all were working together at that bank. And then my last job was as a chief information security officer at an American bank. And when I joined them there, and I met my manager, the first thing was that they need the turnaround of the program, more structure, more governance, so on and so forth. So different challenges at different stage in life and different jobs. Also got acquainted to different cultures because believe it or not, the head office work culture transpires to your satellite offices and branches and so on and so forth. So working with Swedish bank or German bank or American bank is a very different ball game, and probably makes you well-rounded person when you go around and start working with them. You know that ins and outs of working culture. So that was another good benefit that I was lucky to have. So that's my little bit of a journey into how I came to be where I am today.
And I'm going to ask you a question now. We didn't prep this question, but you've obviously been in this game for a long time. You've seen the good, the bad, the ugly. What's for you been the difference in cybersecurity over the last 10 years in terms of awareness, culture, these kind of areas?
Right. So what happened was I've seen that what fraud risk to banking was at one point in time, information security is today. That people are more aware. Before it was like information security was they thought it was some IT engineering job, and management doesn't have to do much about it. But now they realize that it's equal. Actually, it's the tone from the top matters. And I've noticed that more and more upper management getting engagement into information security. The views have changed drastically from it being just a risk or an operational risk to one of the prominent risks that we are facing. And rightfully so, right? Because before, like you are working with pen and paper, there were some applications that were supporting your uh, corporation or organization in some ways. But now everything, not only your core systems, but everything surrounding it is digitalized. And therefore, they realize that the risk is too high if you just delegate it to some people at the middle management. And if you don't set up a good tone in the top, or you don't set up a good vision. Also, they hear a lot about in the news, ransomware news are all over the place that this company lost this much money, and or this got hacked, or this organization got DDoSed. So they now know those words. Before, it was hard to talk to them what ransomware is, right, or what malware is. You have to give a little bit of an explanation. Now they know. They come and they ask, hey, are we prepared for ransomware? Are we doing a tabletop? And that's good because it makes me feel good that, hey, you are aware, and makes my life a little bit easier. Not that budgeting makes easier. That's a different ball game, so I'm not going to go into that part. But that understanding, the awareness, the situational awareness that they have is amazing. And that's helping lots and lots of companies.
And you've kind of gone down the route now, talking a lot about the journey and the technical angle that you've been on, but most recently you've been in a CISO role. So that's not just technical policies and paperwork. It's a lot about leadership, and that's obviously what we're talking about today mainly. Tell us from your perspective, what kind of leaders have inspired you personally?
Right. So I think I was listening to this audiobook, and there was the word that I was looking for, which that person had. So they say that there are two kind of leaders, right? Transactional leaders and transformational leader. What a transactional leader is that they just want to strictly work with you, you work for their benefit and their progress, and then off you go. There's nothing personal about it, right? It's just job.
Yeah.
Maybe it's good fit for some people, but what I found most important is transformational leader. Transformational leader are on the opposite end of the spectrum. What they are doing is they're making sure that as an employee you are growing. You are also, they are helping you meet your goals, because sometimes you have more questions. You might not have full vision on what you are working on, and you might think, why am I working on this? And they might be able to communicate to you that, hey, this is the reason. When you have a reason to work for something, you work better, you understand things better. uh, and when somebody's interested in your personal growth, that makes you even more inspired, right?
Yeah.
So for me, the second kind of leadership has inspired me way more and made me feel better about working, make me look forward to working with them. And I had a luck of actually, I would say I had great luck of working with one of those leaders at my first job. And if I have inherited something from that person, is because how I saw them working, that they cared. They cared about employees. They cared
Yeah.
about making sure that it was just not pure goal oriented. They were genuinely interested in what you are doing, your work, your personal growth. If you had a problem at a personal level, unless you cannot meet some timeline or if you have difficulties, they would understand. They would not go with idea that you are trying to skirt your work, because of course they know your performance, that if this guy is performing very well and if something bad happens, I have to understand. And you always make up for it at a certain point in time, right? Because of course you incur a debt, you feel, or you have a feeling of incurring a debt to that person, and you make up for it. So I think for me, those kind of leaders have always inspired me, and make me also made me into that person where I care for my employees.
Yeah, and that's why we've done this podcast, because from what you're saying now about leadership is what inspires you is caring, motivating. For me, and this is the beauty of this conversation, what I like is quite direct leadership. I like people saying, look, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it. Can you execute? So it's very different in terms of autocratic leader versus democratic. So
Yeah.
from your approach now, just given that I've told you one person's perspective on leadership versus yours, how do you go about motivating people in your organization that maybe are actually more junior level than senior, who maybe need a bit more support?
No, absolutely. So let's go a little bit into an example of waiting for a
Okay.
train, right? Have you seen when we are waiting for a train, people keep looking at the, like, when the train is coming, whether it's a counter or they just bend forward and look at the tracks and see the train is approaching, right? Why
Yeah.
is that, right? It's a constant feedback that you need. And something like that, when your people are junior, when they're still fresh, green, or whatever you want to call it, or navigating the area uh, of information security or what have you, IT, right? That feedback helps them a lot. Uh, it doesn't have to be negative or positive. It has to be constructive. If they're doing a good job, tell them this is what they are doing. You have to be specific that, hey, I like this, and this, what you are doing. And are some areas that you need um, to work on. And these are the areas where you can go get better at, right? And this is how you can get better at. You also have to offer that support to them. Just don't say, hey, you need to get good at like vulnerability management. That doesn't help. If you say, okay, you need to understand this is how it works, this is what this and this happens, and if you need help, my doors are open, right? May not be 24/7, 365, but there are times when you should be approachable. So that's another quality that a leadership should have, is they should be approachable. You should not be closed end and stuff like that. That's not going to be beneficial to anybody. So that's one of the things that I do with new people, is try to give them feedback. It has to be very measured. I think one of the great frameworks is OKR framework. That is objective and key result framework that came out back by Andy Grove. And again, that's like the train approaching, right?
Could you could you explain that, the OKR method?
Yes, OKR method is that you set an objective that, hey, for example, we will achieve our idea is to achieve this growth. Right now, for information, you have to translate it to your department. What is that, right? So, what are the key results to measure this objective, right?
Yeah.
So let's give an example instead of growth example, which is more sales or oriented. Let's give an example that hey, your login should process should happen in X amount of time. It should be fast. That's your objective. It's very general purpose. Now your key result should be that people should be able to log in within 4 seconds or 5 seconds. Now you have a method that it works, right? And now your team knows what to do. So that train is approaching, and that should approach within 4 seconds. Now they are understanding that process. So it should be measurable, it should be specific, those kind of things. That are examples of OKR, right? And if it's not working, you tell them why it is not working, or hey, listen, I see you moved in from 6 seconds to 5 seconds, but our goal is 4 seconds, right? That's my feedback to you. Can we figure out what's happening? Another thing is when you have to keep your teams motivated, especially new one, you always should know conflict resolution methodology, because we as a human sometimes we tend to disagree, right? And it has to be not in a way that hey, it's me against you, or team member A versus team member B. And all leaders should know how to resolve the conflict. And there is a method or a framework also for that everybody should be aware of it. And they have 5 strategies for doing it. One is called avoiding, one is called competing, another one is called collaboration.
Oh, I've seen this.
Huh?
I've seen this. I know exactly what it is.
Yeah, accommodating and compromising. So yeah, you have to understand that your team will disagree with each other or with other members. And sometimes they might feel like you are taking sides if you disagree with them, with one person and agreeing with another person. So you have to be very careful, because it can build resentment in a team if they feel that they're being neglected. So how to approach this problem? And every team is different, so there is no specific advice, but understanding your team member, how they function, giving them feedback again helps. That hey, we are disagreeing not to you because of your personal view, but this helps us as a leader. I can see a broader picture, and this solution fits better. Sometimes you have to work with make sure that they understand each other's work, and you have to be the translator. That can also help. So conflict resolution is also a thing that should be in the pocket of a leader.
And what you've told me there is very theoretical, educational frameworks. What about in a practical sense, right? So we're seeing a massive shift in the workforce now, going from mainly, I can't think of the generation, Gen X, now to millennials and Gen Z. What's the difference in managing these types of people for you?
Right. So what I've noticed that millennials and Gen Z, it's a I would not say it's like I cannot 100% generalize on it, because again, the culture you came from matters, right? So a person coming from Asia, where success is measured by how much you make, versus a person from Europe, where they are more into social welfare and social well-being, versus US, where it's somewhere in between the both of them is there. But what I have noticed is there's one similarity between them, that they both want personal well-being. But Gen Z and millennial, the difference is that millennials are more into job security, work-life balance. Probably they started there, but it transformed more into the Gen Z. They are more into work-life balance. They are more into the issues of like social and cultural development. They want to work for an organization that has some goal. Not just goal is not making money only, but how you're impacting the society, the societal framework is very important to Gen Z. And for me, how I have worked with them is that I learned from them, number one, because if there's somebody has something good to offer, you have to learn. And second is you have to explain that organization that you are working for, how the upper management is trying to achieve non-monetary goals, right? And does it work with them well? And that has to happen when you're hiring a candidate. Because one time it so happened that I was working for one of the bank, and potential candidate called me at the last moment and say, "Hey, listen, I saw your approach to the social framework, and I totally disagree with you guys, and I don't foresee myself working with you at all." And I was happy. I told him, "Thank you for being transparent about it, because it's good that you told me upfront. Otherwise, it would have been a little bit of waste of money and time for all of us."
Yeah.
So when I'm hiring somebody, I after that I started telling them that, "Hey, this is what we do. This is at this organization. Are you in alignment with this goal, right? Do you think this will work with you?" And also, for the recruiters, when I talk to them, I started telling them, "Please keep this in mind. Tell the potential candidate about our work. It will help the process a little bit easier for recruiters as well, because they spend time looking for people and then suddenly it doesn't pan out, right?" So this has been one great thing that I have started, is making sure everybody's aware of our goal, and not only of our balance sheet. Balance sheet can be found online if you're a publicly traded company, or they can ask you, "Hey, how is your profit loss margin going on?" But this is something that cannot be easily found sometimes, unless if their organization is at the forefront and advertising, "Hey, we are here for this social agenda," may it be for workers, may it be for women's or minorities or what have you.
Correct.
Helps a lot.
I like your thoughts on the generation side, but it's kind of made me feel that I'm on a completely different side. So I'm 25, so I think I'm a Gen Z. I don't know, millennial Gen Z. I'm not
I think
sure.
after 81 is Gen Z, from what I understand.
80. I thought that was millennial, but nonetheless, I'm in a different one, because you talk about things like personal well-being, health and social and justice. I'm more on the side of trying to make some money now, but there's so many different things, and that's the beauty of people, right? And the individual differences in leadership. I suppose to end this off, and I think that it gives a good segue. I think that you could probably give a lot of insight to a lot of people. So how can, if people have questions for you directly, how can they reach you?
Oh, they can reach me on my LinkedIn profile. Probably we can post the link to my profile, and they can send me a message. I can talk to them if they have questions regarding any of the topics that we discussed, or any other information security issues that they want to discuss. Not that I'm an expert. There's always
Yeah.
more to learn, but it always have a good having good questions would open would get the juices flowing.
I like it. Well, thank you for obviously coming on. Thanks for listening to Leadership Lessons in Cyber. I look forward to seeing you all on the next episode.